Hello, and welcome everyone to our panel discussion about building skills for the future of work. Thank you for answering our opening question, what comes to mind when you think of the future of work? We're going to take a look at the responses and we'll share them with you at the end of our discussion. Today's presentation is a collaboration of the City Club of Cleveland and Enspire Fall Fest, a conference for K-12 educators. I'm Ilene Frankel, Director at Young Entrepreneur Institute and one of the organizers of Enspire. At Young Entrepreneur Institute, we believe that every child should learn about and experience entrepreneurship because it teaches critical life skills and a mindset that will benefit students no matter what they choose to do later in life. Young Entrepreneur Institute supports K-12 entrepreneurship education by providing professional development for educators and to support schools and organizations interested in introducing their students to the entrepreneurial mindset. The Enspire Fall Fest, which continues virtually over the next several days, was created in partnership with the Burton D Foundation. We are so fortunate to have the visionary and financial support of the Morgan Foundation and its creative and hardworking leader, Deb Hoover, President and CEO.
Thank you, Ilene. Good afternoon, listeners, and thank you to the City Club of Cleveland for hosting this timely panel on building skills for the real world, organized by Young Entrepreneur Institute in partnership with Morgan Foundation. We're thrilled to combine the City Club audience with our Enspire audience of courageous entrepreneurship educators from Northeast Ohio and around the country. 2020 has been one heck of a wild ride for all of us, is all I can say. There's never been a time when the entrepreneurial mindset and related skill sets have been more important as a means to survive and thrive. Educators have been on the front lines of societal transformation wrought by the pandemic, and we're here to extend our thanks for all you have done to keep America's young people on a path to achievement through perseverance, entrepreneurial muscle, and vision for the future. As we navigate the disruptions that have confronted us in 2020, we are made acutely aware of how important it is for young people everywhere to gain entrepreneurial skills that will support innovation, resilience, and creativity in the workplace. Today, I'm very excited to hear the perspectives of these community leaders, all valued colleagues of mine, working on the forefront of change in higher education, nonprofits, and industry. With us today are Marcia Ballinger, President of Lorain County Community College, Randy McShepard, Vice President, Public Affairs and Chief Talent Officer, RPM International, and Board Chair of Policy Bridge, Brad Helfman, Innovation Development Director in Healthcare at GOJO Industries. The panel today will be moderated by Danielle Sydnor, founder and CEO of YEI Strategies Group and president of the Cleveland branch of the NAACP. YEI Strategies Group is a firm dedicated to working with a diverse array of stakeholders to create win-win outcomes for individuals, organizations, and communities. Danielle previously served as ECDI Executive Director, assisting individuals in growing businesses through a comprehensive suite of entrepreneurial programs and services. Thank you to Danielle and to all the panelists for your insights today. And now over to you, Danielle.
Thank you so much, Deborah, and to Ilene and the team that is really making this happen. Say good evening to everybody. I'm just excited to be with you this evening and look forward to having a very thoughtful discussion. As we all know, our world is changing at an increasingly rapid pace. Technology and artificial intelligence become more dominant in the workplace and in the world. Most employers list soft skills as the most important thing that they look for in a prospective team member. Most recently, we've all learned that success requires mastering these soft skills. Things like adaptability, teamwork, critical thinking, communication, and resilience are all skills that make up that entrepreneurial mindset. Today, we'll hear from a diverse group of Northeast Ohio leaders representing higher education, corporations, and the nonprofit community. They'll share their perspectives on the skills and the mindset that people need to find success in the real world. As in every City Club forum, you can participate with your questions. If you are joining us via Zoom, you can submit them via the Q&A box. If you're watching via the live stream, you can also text your questions to 330-541-5794. Again, that's 330-541-5794. We will do our best to try and work them in. So with that, let's begin. I am going to ask my esteemed guests to make sure that their cameras and their audio is unmuted. I'm going to also ask them to introduce themselves briefly by saying their name, their organization, and one word that describes the future of work to them. I'm going to start with you, Marcia.
Thank you so much, Danielle. It's a pleasure to be a part of this wonderful program this afternoon, supporting entrepreneurship. And thank you so much, Deb Hoover and Ilene Frankel, for including me as part of this. So I've had the pleasure of serving as president at Lorain County Community College for the past 4 years. I have been at the college for close to 30 years. And we really embrace and thrive on entrepreneurship. One word, I would say innovation.
Thank you so much, Marcia. And I think we have a word cloud that's going. So I wonder how many times that word is going to come up. We'll see when we get a little bit towards the end. Next, I'll call on Randy.
Good afternoon, everyone. Panelists, Danielle, always good to see you. Great to see my friend Deb from Burton D Morgan, Deb Hoover, and Ilene, thanks for bringing us all together. I work as Vice President of Public Affairs and Chief Talent Officer for RPM International Incorporated, a worldwide chemical coatings company headquartered in Medina, Ohio. And I would say the one word that describes the future of work is evolving.
Evolving. Now, Randy, I've been looking at the chat. I don't know if I've seen that one yet. So
Very good.
A great word to describe. I look forward to our discussion. And finally, rounding out our panelists, I will call on Brad next.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Danielle and Ilene and Deb for asking me to participate in this. Is very exciting. And I'm excited to be able to share what I've learned over the years. I'm with GOJO Industries. I've been there over 20 years. One of the things you probably know that we are the inventors of Purell hand sanitizer, and it's been a very, very busy year. I would say my one word is passion.
Passion. That's also a very great word to think about the future of work, Brad. And I'm sure you all have been busy with hand sanitizer. That's a definitely high in demand product here. So I do have some questions prepared for the panel, and with any of these types of formats, please know that these questions are more of a guide, but there are obviously things that will come up in discussion that you might want to elaborate on more than what I've prepared. We also will have time later in the discussion to take in some of the Q&A from our audience via the chat and those that are texting in their questions to the City Club Forum. So I'm going to start with a question that I would appreciate all of you all to weigh in. I likely will call on you one-on-one just because I know sometime in these Zoom formats, folks are talking and not sure if somebody else is going to jump in. So that way we don't play double dutch with each other. So my first question, and I'll really start with you, Brad, is with the global pandemic and changing the way that we learn and work and interact with each other, what is an entrepreneurial mindset? Why does it matter so much? And how does it impact the future of work? So really, again, we're navigating all these different things. We continue to have discussion around an entrepreneurial mindset. So why does it matter, and how does it impact the future of work?
Well, let me start with, we were way back in January, we were tracking the what could potentially become the pandemic, which did become the pandemic. And it's obviously from the way we work, we're a very collaborative type of environment. And we went remote starting in March, and we are still remote at our corporate office until at least early next year, if not longer. So we had to figure out how would we continue to create that innovative, collaborative environment but in a very different way. So we have a term we use at GOJO a lot, and it's three simple words that I think it helps us, and then hopefully it helps others that are on this session. But it's very simple. We ask ourselves, how might we? So it's very simple, but we ask ourselves, how might we continue to create those connections so that we can learn from each other? How might we dramatically increase our capacity to help make sure that we can serve our purpose? Our purpose at GOJO is saving lives and making lives better through well-being solutions. And with how that has impacted our company and what we do is just unprecedented. I know you hear that word a lot, but we've experienced H1N1, avian bird flu, lots of different things over the years. This is a whole different ballgame, and we're asking, how might we do this or that? And for example, a supply chain standpoint, the demand for our product was through the roof, and we could not supply enough. We focused on healthcare environments. That was our number one priority. And we needed to make sure that we could continue to provide product. We had capacity to make lots of the actual product, the Purell, but we didn't have enough components in terms of bottles. So I'll share just one quick story, and then I'll turn it over to the other panelists. And so we said, how might we solve this challenge, this problem? We ended up working with another Ohio-based company, P&G. We had some relationships and connections there, and we asked them, do you guys have any, guys and gals, do you have any bottle capacity? We were willing to, we know what our purpose is, and once again about saving lives, and we know that we also have this brand that's very strong, and it's iconic, and the bottle it's in is it's a gem shape, all that kind of stuff. But we said, we'll take anything we can get our hands on, because the most important thing is to be able to save lives and get this product into the hands of those that need it. Long story short is we worked with P&G. They were very gracious, very helpful. They gave us a proprietary bottle that I think a lot of people are very familiar with, the Dawn bottle. I actually have one here, and you could say it's a collectible. But what we did is, I don't know if you could see, to kind of thank them. It's one of the few times there's actually another brand on a Purell bottle, and that was something that we really, we had to think of how could we do it, and it's been a huge success in terms of making sure we get it to the right people.
Wow, Brad, I think that there were so many different things in there that demonstrate innovation, being entrepreneurial, being able to quickly pivot to rise to the occasion. So definitely looks like some information that educators can use as they're working with students and thinking about what entrepreneurial mindset actually means. I want to pivot to Marcia and thinking about that same question, but also from the standpoint of, from an educator or an education institution standpoint. We have a lot of educators that are on this line with us today, and some are dealing with students all the way at the earlier part of their education. And there's often this word used when we talk about design thinking, which fits into entrepreneurial mindset and entrepreneurism. So talk to me a little bit about how teachers can start, even with the earliest students, thinking about design thinking and how it always also translates up into post-secondary education.
That's a great question, Danielle. And I think that the how might we that Brad just talked about is a great way for educators from K-12 through higher education to really think about, from that design thinking approach. How do we design with the end in mind, and knowing what are those outcomes that you're trying to achieve, or that end in mind. And when you utilize the question, the how might we, it really creates a different lens and a different framework, whether it's a company looking at, how are they reimagining something, or it's the educator trying to really get that student not only excited, but for the light bulb to go on and to really design from it, because that's the abundance model. That's the appreciative inquiry approach that, from a design modeling and thinking perspective, I think can create those the greater possibilities. And providing whether it's the curriculum, the tools, the experiences, that experiential learning to unleash that creativity, that innovation, the ability to not feel bound by the parameters, and to really blur and erase those lines, which is really, Brad's example, right, of Purell and what was, binding them. But to know that greater purpose and of what is that mission, what is that vision, what is your purpose, and as whether it's the children who are in kindergarten or preschool or first grade, all the way through the entire educational continuum, that understanding, that recognition of what are your strengths, what are your assets to build upon, and to really, for us at Lorain County Community College, for example, our mission is every student's dream matters. And that translates into so many different outcomes, but being focused on what are those metrics that matter, and how, whether it's in a time of a pandemic, when we all have to embrace that flexibility, agility, and then that reimagination, I think are those types of, whether they're soft skills, some are now calling them the new humanics skills, and education, it's the new liberal arts in many ways. And it is that coming together, I think, of really the creation of, we're at a new day one, and giving that permission for students and educators to just really dream differently, because there's no playbook for any of this.
Yeah, I think, Marcia, the fact that you ended with "there's no playbook for any of this" is really some of the conversation that Eileen and I were actually having even before this started, about what's going to happen next for kids going back to school, not going back to school. And everybody is trying to navigate these different decisions. And so I know that, again, we have a lot of educators that are on the line today. So hopefully everybody's able to take something back, regardless of how they're interacting with kids, whether that's in person or whether they're doing that virtually, but be able to bring some of these nuggets that you guys are delivering into that conversation. So I want to pivot now to Randy and really go back to that initial question about, as we look at navigating through a pandemic, and really maybe how some of this has worked its way into your role within RPM, and thinking about entrepreneurial mindset inside of an institution. How do you see that showing up, and what advice would you give educators and professionals that are kind of navigating people coming into the workforce and the need to have that entrepreneurial mindset?
Okay, well, thanks, Danielle. I wanted to say to Brad, I didn't know that we had props as a part of the deal. I would have brought a few things, but no, that's an awesome story. I would start out by saying that the one thing we've wrestled with at our company is just trying to adjust to the new normal, right? I think every employee of our company has to think about their daily work in a different way. We're not together in most cases. We don't have the chance to have informal conversations at the water cooler or what have you. So you have to learn to really, if you're working from home or working from remote locations, I think we all have had to really double down on being self-starters, holding ourselves accountable, not being able to necessarily look to someone for direction, but to actually take the lead and doing whatever work you think is appropriate and timely, being independent in the way we think and act. I like to say this is the ultimate honor system that we are facing as employees of any type of organization or institution. One advantage, Danielle, that I would say we have at RPM, just just to tell a quick story, the founder of RPM company was founded back in 1947. And the founder had a Lincoln Continental that he drove around, and his license plate was 168. Now, our current CEO is a third generation CEO. So this was his grandfather. And for decades, they just thought that was his favorite number. Until recently, our CEO was up one night looking at a picture of his grandfather and said, oh my God, 168, that's the number of hours in a week. My grandfather was thinking this 24/7 thing, decades ago. And he sort of got fired up about that and actually trademarked a term that we call the value of 168, where we talk about the value of every single day and putting the most in every day for your employer, for your family, for your community. And so times like these, I think we all have kind of reflected on the value of 168. How can we make the best of this environment, no matter where we are, no matter where we work, no matter the fact that we aren't interfacing with our colleagues in the way we have in past years. And I think that is really working well for us. One other unique thing about RPM is that we're a holding company. We own over 80 companies worldwide. And unlike most other companies that are in the mergers and acquisitions business, we find companies that are successful, that have successful entrepreneurs leading them, and we ask them to remain with us once they're acquired, which is very different than many of our publicly traded counterparts. So as a result, we believe that there is a very lively spirit of entrepreneurship in the way we all go about our work and our business. And I would just say to educators out there that keep those soft skills in mind and keep strategies in place that allow you to challenge your students to be out of the box thinkers, to borrow from some of Danielle's early terms, to be adaptable, to be resilient. I even like the idea of experiential learning that Marcia talked about. We have to know that it's not about reading a book or some academic piece and dropping it off there, but that's really the beginning. How do you take theory and ensure that it actually plays out in meaningful ways? And that will include some experimentation, some failure, but that is really, I think, the future of work. Stubbing your toe, failing forward, trying new and different things, thinking out of the box. When you look at the explosion of technology, that's what it's all about. People are really thinking big and out of the box. So I'll stop there.
Awesome, Randy. And I think that some of the things that you talked about, really, when you think about the students that are coming out of this pandemic, they will have learned, some of them, how to navigate remote work. That, for some people, this transition was very uncomfortable because they're so used to building and bonding over those face-to-face interactions. So it could be a blessing in disguise that our kids have had to navigate this early in their career, because it absolutely will give them some skill set that they can take back into the workforce. So thank you for that. Marcia, I wanted to pivot to you again, thinking about, before I go there, I'm sorry, I know we've got a couple of questions in the Q&A. After we do these prepared questions, we will go to some, so continue to please drop your questions in the Q&A if you're in the Zoom. If you also have questions and you're watching via the live stream, you can text 330-541-5794. And again, that's 330-541-5794. But Marcia, I know that from my experience in my previous role with ECDI, we did a lot of work with LCCC, and I have two sons that also have a small business and have worked a lot with the Young Entrepreneurship Institute over the last several years. So I had a question for you specifically about the practical application of some of the things that we think about from business and entrepreneurship, and how, again, that really influences the future of work and what our students can be thinking about if they already are tapped into networks like this and they're doing the entrepreneurial thing. How does that translate into things that they can take into the workforce or career or business?
Yeah, great question, Danielle. And that's a great story about your two sons. That entrepreneurial mindset, which begins at an early age, and we can continue to nurture that through different support systems. And I think there are great opportunities within K-12 and higher education. At Lorain County Community College, we have the wonderful resource of Neo LaunchNet as an example, which is supported by the Burton D Foundation, because we want to provide any student who has that dream to work for his or herself, that they can do that. And we're going to wrap around what are those skills, what are those building blocks. We know that the gig economy and the gig workforce is what we are now in, and that is going to, I think, continue to accelerate. So having individuals, having students, youth dream big and know that they can do this with the right ecosystem as a part of it. And I think we do things like the Lemonade Challenge all the way up through then. We host on our campus a program, Flex Factor, which is through Next Flex out of San Jose, California. Several years ago, we had our first cohort of middle and high school students. We had about 40 of them. This past year, we had over 1,500 students immersed in an 8-week program where they were designing flexible electronic solutions with sensors to real world problems. But if you were to, say to students in high schools and in middle schools, are you interested in a career in this? They may not know what that is. But what we're really teaching them is how to innovate, how to invent, how to run their own business, how to do that business pitch. And so I think the ways that we can partner with our K-12 systems, with businesses and higher education together, we have such tremendous resources in Northeast Ohio to really be that gig talent destination for our kids.
Absolutely. And I have one brief follow-up question to that. How do you all teach students about failure? Because I think a lot of innovation, entrepreneurial kind of mindset is that iterative process. And sometimes coming from high school into where it's like, I got to get straight A's to now enjoying the fact that sometimes you fail and that's how you get to success.
Yeah, so and that actually is a part of our process with entrepreneurship, which also includes, we have our Campana Center for Ideation and Invention, which opened just over a year ago. We have now one of the largest fab labs in the country, and we are one of the 2 super nodes out of MIT's Fab Lab, the other being in Barcelona. And that failure process is a critical element of it. It's part of that creativity. It's part of that iteration, as you described it, Danielle, and just teaching and learning. And that's experiential learning at its best.
Thank you. So Brett, I have a question for you as it relates to innovation. And, really the context for this is that I sit in a lot of different spaces and have the privilege of having conversations around what the future of our region looks like, how we got here and where we need to go. And so thinking about sometimes the Midwest being viewed as this place that has a hard time retaining and attracting talent for some of the in-demand industries. And sometimes folks say, innovation is the future. And then there's this conversation that innovation is right now, like we've got to be ready for the things that are in demand today. Talk to me a little bit about what role educators can play in helping students be interested and attracted to innovation and jobs that will fall into those in-demand industries today and in the future.
Danielle, thanks. That question is interesting because I would agree that the future of innovation is now when it's related to the students. We need to start now because in the next 5 to 10 years, these are the folks that will be, whether they're entering college, entering the workforce, these are the individuals that will help the next generation of innovators. On the other hand, the innovation process, it is, I want to be realistic too, and I want to build on what Randy and Marcia have said, because the word failure is something that is so critical. And at GOJO, we have a term we use called fail fast, fail cheap. And so we really encourage people to fail, but in a way, in a smart way. We don't want to, bet the entire company on something, but we want people to do a fail fast, fail cheap approach, which really builds on what we've heard from Marcia and Randy, is this experiential learning. So we are really big into experimenting, trying things, and very much hands-on. And I would encourage the educators, and I think it's a theme we've already heard, is to try to do that with the students, give them opportunities to experiment. And we actually at GOJO, we reward failure. I mean, it's something that, because we want people to keep doing that, and we want people to feel that, maybe in the old days or whatever, if you failed, that was, putting your career at risk. I think in today's environment, if you do it in a way that's trying to learn, because that's really what it's all about. It's the failure. The most critical part of that is what did you learn from that failure, and what part of that learning should you keep? What part of that should you pivot to something else? Or, in some cases it's okay, I learned, and let's stop. Let's not do this. Let's move on to something else. So it's really about learning. So with the students, yes, the future is now. We need to get that type of mindset, that type of thinking now, in small doses perhaps. And then, but once again, the future is of innovation. It is a process, and it really depends on the magnitude of the innovation. We have something where we say that from innovation, it's, there's stuff you need to work on today. With any business, there's stuff you need to work on tomorrow, and then there's the day after tomorrow. And those are things that they don't happen overnight. They're hard. There's lots of challenges. There's lots of failures, but you need to do it because we say that, and this might be a little harsh, but it's you either innovate or you die.
That's a very poignant way to put it, right?
And I hate to say it that way, but there's you look at companies that were around 20 years ago, 10 years ago. I forget what the stats are, but it's really staggering when you see that only X% are actually in existence today, and it's the next generation of companies. Those that kind of the risk takers don't have those that are trying the things that we're suggesting.
And Brett, I had a follow-up question because one of the questions that came in through the Q&A was about this concept of fear. So you talked about you all reward failure. I'm sorry, you reward failure. Could you give an example maybe of a way that you all do that, or something that you might suggest to teachers that are thinking about this concept of rewarding someone for failure?
I can't go into specific projects, but I'm thinking of one where it was related to obviously we're skincare focused and something like that, and we were working on a project. It was actually a potential partnership, and we do it's called a due diligence process, and the team just did an outstanding job of looking at the IP landscape and the technology and how does it work and all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the due diligence, we said we shouldn't do this. But thank God we did it this way. We didn't move forward with this platform. But we rewarded the team, and what we like to do is one of the ways we reward is we give people things that it's not about maybe something. We like to be collaborative and get together. We do that a lot. So when we try to reward, we actually try to do things that will do this with your family. Okay. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's always interesting to think about ways that we might incorporate learnings from what's happening in the real world, in the business environment, especially into our education system. So I appreciate that example.
Yeah, and the one last thing I want to say is the other thing we're very much a learning company and learning environment, and one of the ways we do that is we are very good listeners. So we listen to what others, and it creates very rich dialogue. And we're not, one of the things I'd advise is when you're teaching students, actually teach them the art of listening, because so many of us, especially, we're listening and we're not really listening. It's not active listening. We're thinking about what are we going to say and this and that, but you're missing what the person's actually sharing with you, which can actually be a great, learning opportunity.
Absolutely. And I think all of us, as busy as we are and distracted, it's easy to not be as attentive to what's happening and be as present in the moment. So that's a great takeaway, Brad. Randy, I had a question for you. We think about the role that you have at RPM, and I happen to also know some of the things that you do outside of that particular role with your work on RIDAL and really kind of formulating and founding that organization. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what you would tell teachers to think about specifically with young Black students and how to spark some of that, connecting those attributes of behaviors that may happen in the classroom with the entrepreneurial mindset. Because again, just knowing some of the work that you've done in the community, I could perceive that someone would not know the work you're doing from RIDAL and also say, well, how does somebody who's leading at an organization like RPM also have this awesome, amazing thing that's happening in one of the most underinvested neighborhoods in the city of Cleveland? So talk to me a little bit about what teachers can do to really pull out and hone in and support that entrepreneurial mindset and thinking among young Black male students, and really how you've navigated your role with RPM and RIDAL to be able to do that.
Sure. So for those of you tuned in, RIDAL is actually an urban farm that myself and two childhood friends started 10 years ago this summer. And we went into an area of Cleveland that was known as the Forgotten Triangle. It was the most notorious illegal dumping site in the entire city. And we started by investing our own money and started aggressively pursuing grants and other opportunities, and pretty much grew what was initially a 1.3 acre farm with a lot of trash and debris that we ultimately cleaned up to what is now a 15 acre campus that includes 2 greenhouses, 6 hoop houses where we're growing fresh produce. We also have one of, if not the only, EPA licensed compost facilities in the city of Cleveland at that site. We also spun off a fish hatchery or urban fish farm. We're actually farm raising tilapia fish and selling those to local restaurants. And just a few weeks ago, we finished, we're about 80%, 85% done on an actual restaurant building that we will use for pretty much teaching people how to prepare healthy foods, because our farm is located in a food desert community and we wanted urban dwellers to understand how to prepare healthy food and how to know that there's other options to the fast food restaurants that they see in great number in that community. So one of the best things we've done is to bring students down to that farm and to let them see all that we're doing. And there's so much for them to see, and their heads are just spinning by the time they leave. And we can talk on many levels about, you need to, combine carbon and nitrogen to make compost soil, or we can talk about photosynthesis and how that plays into growing fresh vegetables on the farm site. I even go into a business presentation for them where I say, this business suit that I'm wearing is the new overalls for farmers, because farming is changing. Farming can be very lucrative, and kids are really excited. They're blown away. One of my favorite stories, Danielle, is 2 years ago, we had a 3rd grade classroom from Cleveland schools come back from a field trip to our farm. And one of the students was asked by a principal or a teacher, what did you like most about the field trip? And the boy's response was, all the bosses look just like me. So that was pretty powerful, right? And it starts to show kids through experiential learning what is possible. And through a fraternity I'm involved in, I've also coordinated field trips where I've sent groups of kids from an all boys school in Cleveland to visit very successful people in prominent, positions. So people that I knew at NASA hosted a group. Fred Nance, a very prominent lawyer in Cleveland, happens to be LeBron James and Dave Chappelle's attorney. He hosted a group. The president of Tri-C hosted a group. A person that has an orthodontics office hosted a group, and so on and so forth. And what these kids were coming back with was just unbelievable. I mean, kids were saying, oh my God, I thought the only thing a lawyer did was get people out of jail. I didn't know that they could sign contracts with Nike for a guy like LeBron James or all these kinds of things. So just taking kids out of the classroom, putting them in those type of environments where they can actually experience, hear stories, see people that have come from similar backgrounds that are doing all sorts of interesting things. And scientists are passionate about science, and lawyers are passionate about law, and educators are passionate about education. So whatever the field is, there's something to be learned and gleaned, for those young people. I think, once they are not only put in that environment, but have a chance to ask questions and really see that people, come from similar backgrounds, it really makes all the difference. So I've been very proud of, the work that we've done at Riddle and the support, quite frankly, that RPM has given not only the Urban Farm, but all of the community involvements that I've been a part of. I like to coin myself a social entrepreneur, just because I've been involved in starting 4 nonprofit organizations and being involved in any number of nonprofit boards and commissions. And it gets back to some of the questions that you asked earlier. These are transferable skills. It's all about, regardless of if it's nonprofit, for profit, it's being creative, thinking out of the box, being visionary, pushing the envelope, doing things that haven't been done before, certainly going into a dump and converting it into a 15-acre farm. I don't know how much more innovative one can be, but it's all been a lot of fun, and hopefully the teachers get something from that.
Yeah, and Randy, and this is for all 3 of you, I'm now going to pivot to questions that are coming in from the chat and also from the City Club text number. There was a question specifically, and I'll read it how it's written. It's very clear that the most successful companies will be diverse and inclusive. How are the 3 of you currently training the next generation of leaders to lead for diversity, equity, and true inclusion? And I think, Randy, you touched on some of those. Anything you would elaborate specifically to this question? And then I'll go Brad and Marcia.
Well, I'll just say that, obviously for major corporations, especially, this is a hot button item these days. Everyone's talking about it. If you're not talking about it, you should be. And if you're publicly traded, trust me, your shareholders will be asking you about it. So you better be ready for it, which is a good thing in my estimation. So we had been doing it in the past, but there certainly has been a quickening of the pace, if you will, with respect to starting programs and initiatives that focus on developing emerging minority leaders, developing emerging women leaders, and allowing those groups to offer input, have FaceTime with the CEO of the company and other senior leaders, be a part of any new initiatives and projects, and not, handing things down, but really listening and bringing things up from the bottom. I think that's going to be the new normal, the new way of doing business. And it's, I think, adding a lot more value to, the kinds of ideas that we are kicking around in the corporate headquarters. So excited to see that happen.
Thanks, Randy. Brad, anything you all are doing specifically around that?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I've been at GOJO a while, and as long as I've been there, we've always valued diversity in so many different ways. But actually, just recently, it was last week, it was announced we are now a minority-owned, woman-owned company. So that was something that we've been working on for X number of months, and we actually got official certificate and everything last week. So that's just a great example. But as we're filling roles, I mean, we because of what's going on and with our business, we've been actually hiring a lot of individuals, and we continue to look for diversity in so many different ways in terms of what people, the old days of, this is the role and we have to have somebody that checks off all the boxes. Now we're checking off boxes to make sure we bring diversity into whatever those roles are that we're filling. And to kind of build on what Randy, it's a big deal. And the beauty of diversity is as it ties to innovation, it really accelerates that process and allows you to think of things that you just wouldn't think of if you were all kind of from the same mold. And it really is a key thing to help continue the innovation process.
Thank you. And Marcia?
Yeah, and I would add to that from the college's perspective in terms of our commitment to students and that every dream matters, and truly addressing it from a community perspective, from economic and social mobility. So our equity, diversity, and inclusion prioritization and our values, we have over the past several years really raised those to ensure that that our commitment to equity is really the idea that we will meet students where they are. And I think from an educator's perspective, this is really important. It's not what students know. We had to reposition the college from thinking, are students college ready, to is the college student ready? And when we started to disaggregate our data from an educational perspective and the outcomes of achievement and success, and you start to see the gaps and the barriers. So we have spent the past 3 years so laser focused on this to really examine policies, to examine professional development, which is a key component, I think, for educators of whether it's K-12, higher education, and to commit to what does an equity-focused agenda mean? And so we have our entire college really immersed in that and measuring that and redesigning around it. And so that spans from what does it mean from an equitable employment outlook? Where are individuals majoring, and how are we moving? In Lorain County, we know that individuals who are born into the lowest socioeconomic quintile, only 4.7% of them get to the top of that quintile from an earning potential during their lifetime. We have to eliminate that. And it is working together back with our employers, back with K-12, and then from our own professional development and hiring perspective, assuring that equity, diversity, and inclusion is a focus of it.
Thank you. And to the audience that's listening, you guys have provided some really great questions. And I know we're going to be almost nearing wrap up, so we won't be able to get to all of them this evening, but I wanted to thank you because it means you're listening very attentively. I do have a question that's recently come in that I think is directed towards Brad. You talked about the importance of listening, which feels kind of connected to the humanities. Can any of the panelists talk about how the humanities and liberal arts prepare students for entrepreneurship and the future of work? So anyone can take that one.
I'll start with it. So there is a new focus, I think, on the humanities and liberal arts. There's a great book that I would recommend to educators. It's called Robot Proof. written by Joseph Aoun, who is the president of Northeastern University. And so he describes the humanics and says, for the future of work, while it's the critical thinking skills, but combined with big data and data analytics, cultural competencies, and that it is the humanics that will really become that foundation. So as we think about robot proof and automation and AI and AR, that, robots can outperform, debaters today, right? But what is that value added as humans that we can bring to that to ensure that in this rapidly changing technological economy, that our students, that our employees are truly bringing the value added, and that causes all of us who teach liberal arts education to look at those outcomes, and that starts, from K-12.
Absolutely. And just to get the breadth of that, we can either have Brad or Randy go on to that. I do have another question that I think may be interesting for a perspective from some of the things that Brad said, if you don't mind pivoting to that. Okay, so the question that's come in is, much of early education involves memorization of a quantity of basic information. How can we integrate out of the box thinking while at the same time learning how to use foundational knowledge? And Brad, I'm lobbing this one to you because I think about, some of the work that's done inside of your industry. There is just a right and a wrong way, right? Like, we have to be able to know that this thing has to happen a very specific way. But then you've also talked about the iterative process and failing fast, but failing cheap. And so how do you kind of combine really both of that thinking and really in one setting?
Yeah, Danielle, are you referring to, because our products are like FDA regulated?
Yeah.
And we have to.
I mean, there's certain things that have to happen. And my sister works for Johnson & Johnson.
Yeah. So we know that as we're, let's say we're starting down the journey of a new idea or new concept. We always know in the back of our mind that there are certain things that are not negotiable. When it comes to, you need to have a product that's safe, efficacious. It has to meet the FDA requirements. There's certain claims you can make and cannot make. So we kind of set those as the the guardrails for the innovation process. But we try to keep them as wide as possible so that we don't constrain the thinking, and then we allow people to do that fail fast, fail cheap. Now, what's interesting is, like a product like Purell, obviously it's FDA regulated, but that's specific to the formulation and how it works. But the product is also surrounded around packaging. So when it comes to the packaging, we can be there are a lot less constraints. We can do all kinds of different things, whether it's how it's dispensed, the format it's in. We actually launched a product and it's been extremely successful. It's a unit dose of Purell. Unfortunately, you could get it on Amazon, but right now it's typically out. But it's a Purell unit dose, and we chartered folks many years ago to figure out how do we, Purell is a product that you can use on the go, and so therefore you're not always going to be near a wall-mounted dispenser or a bottle or something like that. What if we created something that you could carry in your pocket, and you always had something like that? So, we said that from a packaging standpoint. You can, the world is wide open, and we actually found some technology over in Europe, in Italy specifically, and then brought it over here and then launched it.
Awesome. And so I'm going to lab this final question to Randy in the last 60 seconds that we have. And I hate to put you on a time limit, but I want to be fair to the couple more things that we want to round out the forum with. There was a specific question, Randy, about determining a candidate's soft skills and really looking at this global role that you have from an HR professional. What can we do to maybe leave teachers with a couple of nuggets to think about on how you all in professional world are looking at determining whether or not a candidate has that soft skill, and how you might also determine if a candidate has an entrepreneurial mindset?
Yeah, well, in 60 seconds, I'll just say that my job as Chief Talent Officer is to get people ready for leadership positions. And one big thing we learned is that people can be brilliant at R&D and accounting and law, but if they don't have emotional intelligence, if they don't treat the people that they work with respect, if they're not mindful of the importance of diversity and inclusion, if they're not getting the fact that companies have a role and responsibility to give back to the community, teamwork makes the dream work, all these kinds of things, that's what makes for a smart and effective leader. So we more so maybe approach it from a different perspective. We sort of find those challenges that individuals have, and we try to send them to charm school, so to speak, to gain a lot of those critical skills. I don't think it takes most of us a long time to sort of know who has an ability to be comfortable with either working with people or being comfortable being uncomfortable, meaning that they don't fall apart when things don't necessarily go the right way. So I just think that educators should continue to sort of challenge students to think out of the box, to be in unusual kind of settings where they don't necessarily know what's about to happen, and they have to kind of react to something that they never have seen before. I think that's critical, because that's what we're all dealing with right now with the pandemic, right? So if we all would have had these lessons back in elementary school, imagine how much better off we'd be right now. So for the sake of time, I'll stop there. But if I can borrow 10 more seconds, as a graduate of a liberal arts college and a 15-year board member of a liberal arts college, Baldwin-Wallace University, we have been saying for many, many years that those that can show flexibility and adaptability and a skill set or a number of skill sets will win in the end. And I think that is showing right now, and the way we think about humanities and all these other things that we're talking about.
Absolutely. And Randy, I'll let you take 10 seconds any day of the week.
All right.
So now as we close out, we have a word cloud that you all had started at the beginning of this conversation. And so I'd love to see that word cloud come up. It's here on our screen now. And really what I think that it demonstrates, hopefully, as you thought about maybe the words that first came to mind, continue to think about maybe how those words changed for you as you listened to this conversation. I thank everybody for a great discussion. I apologize we couldn't get to all the questions, but we really wanted you to hear from all of our panelists. And now I'm going to turn it over to Dan Malthrop, who is going to walk us through some more information this evening.
Danielle Sydnor, thank you so much for your for leading the conversation and so skillfully, and for helping us really understand these issues a little more clearly. Everybody, please, virtually raise your hands, put them together for Danielle Sydnor, please. Really great job. I want to thank all of you as well for joining us for our forum on building skills for the future of work in the real world. Our panelists have been Brad Helfman of GOJO Industries, where he's Director of Innovation Development, Dr. Marcia Ballinger, President of Lorain County Community College, and Randy McShepard, Vice President of Public Affairs and Chief Talent Officer at RPM International Incorporated, where he also runs a small charm school. Our forum today is presented as part of the Enspire Fall Fest 2020, sponsored by the Burton D Morgan Foundation. We're very grateful for this opportunity to partner with both organizations. All City Club virtual forums are sponsored by Bank of America, the Cleveland Foundation, Eaton, the George Gund Foundation, KeyBank, Nordson, the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, and PNC, along with many other generous member sponsors and others who support our work. You can find them all listed on our website at cityclub.org/thank you. You can also join them in supporting our work when you become a member or make a contribution at cityclub.org. I'm Dan Malthrop. Thank you so much for being a part of this, and thanks to everybody for all the great questions and the great conversation. The forum is adjourned, but don't go away, because I know that Ilene has more to talk to everyone about.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you, everyone, for participating today. Wow, so much to think about. Great questions, great answers from our panelists. I woohoo for the liberal arts that you said. I am a fan of that as well. But before we take a break, I want to announce the upcoming sessions for those interested in learning more about youth entrepreneurship education and curriculum and activities and classroom support. Join the upcoming 30-minute session led by youth entrepreneurs. It starts at 5:15. Just find the Youth Entrepreneur Showcase workshop in today's schedule on the Enspire web portal or the Enspire mobile app. Then click Join Virtual Session. Tomorrow, we'll start at 3:45 with a keynote presentation from Heather McGowan, a leading speaker, author, and commentator on the future of work. And don't forget our Scrappy Hour and Creativity Challenge at 5:25. For those of you who are wondering, we have a kit of really cool upcycle scraps that we're going to be using in a really fun way. Bring your family, bring your friends. It's going to be fun. It's going to be casual. And let's put those scraps together toward good use in a really productive way. Have a nice evening, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.